Hey, welcome back, everyone, to The Way It Is. This is your host, Luca with Remax Service First Realty. I do have a topic today, but before we get to that, I'm in a bit of a solemn mood today. Might be the weather a bit, but and I've never made this platform a political one. I'm not saying I'm starting now, but in light of recent events, and I was negligent last week in addressing it, but I'm going to ask any of you that are listening that either you can press pause, but I would ask you that you take about a 30-second pause to just have a cognitive thought about the 215 children bodies that were discovered in Kamloops, BC, which is just a deepening, darker stain on Canada's history and our conscience. And then for this family of four that was taken away by the acts of a young, obviously misguided, misunderstood individual. So in London, Ontario. So I would ask that if you have the opportunity and you'd like to, pause this for 30 seconds and give that a thought. So, today's podcast, Canadian Stress Test 2.0. We're doing it again. The first one wasn't good enough, so we had to go back. So, and I think I've talked about this in previous podcasts. I'm sure we've touched on it with the mortgages and the rates and all that kind of stuff. So, and one of the reasons this has come up, is because this just came into place, and dealing with one of my licensed assistants, Sam Myers. We were talking about a topic for this week because I had a guest, but they couldn't. They had to reschedule at the last minute. And he said, "You got to talk about the stress test." He goes, "Every person I'm having a conversation with is asking me about it." So, and that stands to reason because apparently 50% of Canadians don't really know what the heck this is.
I'm part of that.
So, and I'm here with Ben. Sorry, Ben, I got distracted there with my deep in thought there, but I'm here with Ben Myers, of course, my fabulous videographer and a guru of podcasting. And so we're going to do a bit of a Q&A, and I already stole the first one from him, but I'll just go on and talk about this one, and then you can go on with the rest. But
yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously a test that was designed to tackle household debt issues in Canada. And, the concern is that Canadians are getting over-indebted and basically leveraged up to their eyeballs. And then I think the ultimate thing is to make sure that these young buyers, or any buyers, when they're entering the marketplace, aren't doing it on a shoestring budget. So, yeah. So, okay, Ben, you go. Let's do.
Well, it already sounds like this is kind of, perfectly segueing from last week's episode of when shit hits the fan to now, because, it is important when you're, planning to put so much money down for an investment. You got to make sure you actually have the funds available. So kind of going from that, big question is, how does the bank determine what an individual can afford? What can I afford?
Well, yeah. So I mean, there's two several criteria. First and foremost, truthfully, for those of you listening, is a credit bureau report is key one. You really need a strong credit bureau and credit history, and by that I mean a track record of credit. It's not a bad thing to have credit, meaning visas and lines of credit and those kinds of things, but you need to have a stellar history of repayment, of not outstanding amounts in excess, a chronic history of missing payments or not making payments on time. That affects your credit score. Credit scores have changed from before. It used to be a rating of A and R. R's, it was alphabetical, and now it's numerical. So it's beacon scores, they refer to it as. And anything essentially over 650, you're in a good credit place, meaning that you've got credit, you're paying off your bills, you're not letting things lapse, those kinds of things. So, and I know for those, and here's just a tip for anyone trying to establish credit. Fastest, best way to do it: go to your bank, prepay a Visa for $1,000 or $2,000, start using it, and pay off the balance every time you use it. And that will automatically start establishing that you have a credit pattern, a good pattern, and a history of paying off debt. So, okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, most of these questions are from my brother that he sketched up here. One of the big ones here is, what happened June 1st?
So June 1st is when the stress test, the revised stress test, came into practice. That's when all lenders started to use this new test. So previously in the old stress test, so we all know rates are rock bottom right now. You can get variable rates for as low as 1.55%, fixed rates for as low as 2.09, and maybe even lower. And so, but what the government now has mandated is that anybody buying a home, so it doesn't mean whether you're a first-time buyer, third home, putting 20% down, which is the threshold to avoid high ratio financing, meaning being underwritten by Canada Mortgage and Housing or some of the other private ones that are out there. Regardless, you need to qualify based on your income, based on your credit, based on your, all of those other factors that, going back to the previous question about how do banks establish qualifications. So it's credit, employment, years of employment, gross income, obviously, and then some other factors. The property that you're buying then also becomes a variable as well, because certain lenders won't lend in certain properties in certain areas and all the rest of it. But so back then, the rate that anyone had to qualify for was 4.79%. So as you can see, significantly higher than the rate that you're going to get out in the marketplace. So now they changed that from 4.79 to 5.25. So basically a 0.5% increase, 0.46 increase. And so now again, if you're going into the bank and saying, I'm thinking about buying a house. Okay, that's fine. What's your income? And now there's two, and I'm going to skip ahead because there's two determining ratios that a lender uses. So gross debt service ratio, GDS, 32%, different lenders use it differently, but it hovers around 32% of anyone's gross income can go towards mortgage, taxes, and some form of utility component to buy a home. All right. And so with the stress test, when you're qualifying for that mortgage rate and the payments are X, that's going to predetermine how much of your gross income can go towards those costs. The second component to that is called TDS, total debt service ratio. And this is as high as between 40 and even I've heard as high as 44% again. And I've actually heard the GDS as high as 39%. Again, it varies from lender to lender, from situation to situation. But the TDS is everything that the gross debt service incorporates, meaning a mortgage payment, taxes, a utility component, plus any payment for outside debt, car loan, boat loan, CDU loan, outstanding credit card loan or debt, outstanding line of credit, library card you didn't pay, all of those other things that you've got outstanding, school tuition, or student loans rather. Sorry, I think you just came to me. All those get lumped into this outside debt thing. So then again, now what the banks are saying is, okay, no more than 40 to 44% of your total gross income can count towards those costs, because then you're going to need the other 56 to meet living, right?
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah. Jeez.
So that increase, sorry, just to go back then. So that increase now of 0.5%, and is, sorry, I don't follow question scripts very good, Ben, because I'm jumping ahead. But anyway, it's here now, so I'm going to talk about it. But so what the practical application of that is, let's say you could afford to buy a $400,000 house, or get a $400,000 mortgage. Now, all you're going to get is $380,000. That's the real life translation of what that means in terms of, now you've eliminated that much buying power from every buyer's pocket.
So it is essentially just sucked away a certain percentage of money that you would, before the new stress test happened on June 1st. That money is gone.
So post June 1st, if you were looking at a house for X, now it's $20,000 less that you have in your pocket to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's just across the entire board.
That's across the spectrum. Yep.
Yeah.
The stress test treats everyone equally. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So was there reasons for this significant change?
Well, I mean, of course, the government and nobody wants to leave things alone. And of course, the speed and the volatility of the market is a perceived concern for everybody. And the biggest, we've heard all the comments about affordable housing, people getting priced out of the market and everything else. And I mean, there's a lot of material there to have an infinite number of podcasts. And I'm not here to debate what the government should do right now to create affordable housing. So basically, they were trying to pump the brakes on the real estate market. The term, it was overheating, and they needed to cool it down. And I'm guessing that they were trying to maybe just rein in some buyer behavior, because we were hearing all of those stories of people bidding, $150,000 over asking, $200,000 over asking, whatever, right? And of course, it varies center to center. But yeah, so I think it was. The premise and the intent was to try to put the brakes on that.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned like the perceived concern in those situations. Is there an actual legitimacy to this kind of fear that there might be another big housing bubble burst or something along the lines?
God, yeah. So. No, I mean, there's no bubble. There really isn't. And even them trying to do this to take the air out of it a little bit is I think it's misguided, and I think it has unintended consequences that are probably far worse than the intended positives. Mm-hmm. No, because I don't know if I've said this on air or not, but the reason I know what's happening now, I'm not saying that it cannot sustain it. I don't think it can sustain itself, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. It will run its course. The big unknown is how long and when. Is it going to be the end of this year? Personally, and I've said this to people that I deal with and anybody that asks me, I see it going to the end of this year, possibly even the end of Q1. And again, going back to previous podcasts, for those of you that are watching or listening and paying attention, you would remember the underlying principles here that are conspiring to these processes are scarcity of inventory, which is even worse. In fact, in Kingston area, and my clients know this because we send them updates, the residential inventory is down almost 50% from year to date.
Wow.
So, you still have buyers, you still have demand. So that's a simple economics, no supply or very little supply, a lot of demand. Mm-hmm. This is going to continue on for a while. I think so it's not a bubble. Now, what will happen after this thing there becomes potentially a satiation of demand is we're going to see it in hopefully that's careful how to choose my words. I don't want to sort of offer that to mean anything other than I think it's going to go back to a sustained, a more balanced market in the sense that appreciation now is at between 35 to 46% in certain centers, right? So even if it drops by half, we're still at 15 to 20% appreciation, right? So that's still a very stable market, a very strong market. There's still buyers operating in the marketplace. Now, foreseeably, you may not get 25 offers on a home. You may get 5 offers on a home. It may become at least a little bit more palatable for the players in the marketplace and less frenetic and less frenzied, if you will.
Yeah. Well, so is it, I was talking with Sam about this the other day. Is it majority outside buyers? And what I mean, like, you know, people from outside of Kingston.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, it's there's a lot of them. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of them. And in fact, I'm part of a real estate Facebook group, and an agent made a post there on the weekend that they were out showing properties and ran into more out-of-town agents they didn't know than to local agents that they did know. So, it's every day. Today I had 3 calls from agents outside in the GTA asking about properties here and wanting to come in with their clients. And that's the new wave. That's what's happening. Period. I mean, I've said it before. Just because we're licensed to sell in Ontario doesn't mean you should, but we are experiencing. And again, so yes, the stress test will affect those markets. But let's understand this. There's still people, again, that every day somebody wakes up, they've won the lottery. Their property just increased by X number of dollars, right? So you just got a bunch of free money, tax-free money, in fact, if it's your personal residence, right? So, these people are still making in excess equity that they didn't have the month before, 6 months before, the year before. So regardless of a stress test, the affordability factor for those that can still afford it. And let's understand this. COVID, stress test, these types of things invariably always penalize those that were on the fence, right? That were on the edge, right? Yeah. So now it's kicked that young couple, if they were working hard and they had good jobs and they had no debt or whatever, now it's just put them on the sidelines because now they can't afford to do what they originally wanted to do, right? Because those that have always have.
Yeah. So for the buy and sell market, and with this new stress test, what do you think the landscape's going to be like post-COVID? With the assumption that a decent more amount of property in Kingston will now have been like outside owned at that point.
Yeah, but let's understand what they're doing too. It's not a lot of these people are coming here to live.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not.
People are realizing that like you don't want to always live in around the GTA anymore. And they still just want some big city amenities, so they're coming to Kingston. So it makes sense.
Absolutely, and geographically, again, Kingston is sought after. But the speculative side of things is. I don't see that. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of investors buying here for the simple reason that. The math still makes some sense here if you buy an investment property. And that's the reason why that's adversely affecting the residential market in general, simply because inventory's now going to a different marketplace than potentially what it was originally intended for, which is you trying to buy your first house when someone else is going to say, I'm going to buy it and rent it out instead. So now they've eliminated that opportunity from you in order to buy it as an investment property. So that's happening quite often now, right? So and it's a different value proposition. It's a different thing, and it works both ways. I'm not trying to paint these buyers, residential buyers, as victims, because it works both ways. Because as investors, and I've seen it when we've been in situations to offer multiple offers, that a residential buyer actually has more leverage than an investor, because an investor is about the dollars and cents, right? At the end of the day, you can't go goofy with an overbidding because the math just won't make sense at the end of it. Where a residential buyer now, it's that intrinsic value of the emotional side of it. So if I'm going to be there if I'm going to be here for the next 5 years. What's $20,000 if I drop an extra $20,000? As long as I can afford it and the budget works, and so the value proposition, it's hard to compete investors, it's hard to compete with those types of buyers, right?
Yeah, that's true. And, I'm sure there's a lot of those people that are either kind of moving up to a new home. They've been saving for a while. They have like the money necessary to try and outbid some
That's
of the
right. Or the
builders.
upgrade now. And that's, it's only upgrade.
Yeah.
Let's understand this, because I'm dealing with some clients too now of an older demographic that are thinking of selling. And the days of the lateral moves, from what I've seen, are gone. Like, you are not moving laterally. The only way you're going to if you're going to sell your property and get all this gain, and you want to go back into the marketplace, you better be ready to really put yourself into a different position of what type of house you're looking. If you're wanting to put some of that cash in your pocket and save it for a rainy day, you either going to decide to rent, because now renting maybe makes sense, if depending on what stage of your life you're in. But if you're going to want to buy something, those days where someone would say, I'm going to sell for X and I'm going to get the same house and now, get all this equity. No, because if you want to improve, you're now spending that and then some to get to the next level, right? So.
Well, so kind of moving on from the improvement side of things, if you're looking to improve, like obviously like the center downtown core, or even just like heading out of Kingston, you'll find places that could easily be fixed up for, a decent amount of money. But more than ever, Kingston's been seeing huge amounts of new developments of suburban houses, especially across the causeway.
Yeah.
I think a lot of Kingstonians favor space more than anything. We're not getting the excessively tiny yards that, say, Torontonians get.
Well, no, we're getting that. Sorry, I'm going to check you on that, Ben, because the new developments now, the minimum used to be you'd be able to get 60-foot lots or 50-foot lots, and now they're pretty much 35 or 45 maximum and stuff. So the developers and the builders, not so much the builders, but the developers, because it's, again, you have to maximize your profit in terms of the cost of the land and the cost of developing that land. So you want to try to cram in really as many lots as you can, serviceable lots as you can. So we are seeing that. There are certain new subdivisions that have that. But that's why we're also seeing, if you notice, there are builders still building, tract builders still building detached single family homes, but also, a lot of the project is semi-detached and townhomes, right? Because now you're building blocks of them. It's economies of scale. You got volume building. You've got, you're doing 5 roofs at a time, or 4 roofs at a time, 4 basements at a time. So it's a cost savings. And several years ago, the official plan changed in Kingston, but all municipalities, most municipalities across Ontario, where they wanted to start seeing a diversity and a mix of socioeconomic demographics in new subdivisions, right? Because that's where people were getting left out of subdivisions, right? If it's all big, just single family homes on 60-foot lots, then that's only a certain type of buyer that can afford to buy in there. So now they want to have a mix of these townhomes, of these semi-detached, and then single families. That being said, I know for a fact that one builder in town in a development just down the street here just released their new townhomes, and units start with a 6 in the number, in the price. So it's not like it's a townhome for $350,000 anymore. So.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So do you think this is the way of Kingston for the future?
I think, and I've always thought this for a while now. I mean, Kingston's kind of been stuck for a little bit in terms of its growth and where it's going. And,
it has felt very stagnant.
Yeah. So, and now, because I've always said, everybody always wonders, it's always that theory in urban, urbanism or urban planning. And that, when does a municipality reach sort of like a critical mass, right? And once it reaches a critical mass, and by that I mean a population size and density that now allows it to do other things vis-a-vis services and amenities, like a convention center, like another theater, like those things that you would now see. How did Toronto become Toronto? It didn't happen overnight, but I mean, so in Kingston's, it's moving in that direction. which is, I think, a good thing. I think it's only going to benefit. And it has to move in that direction, because now we're getting into a population base that there just aren't going to be enough services and amenities to support the influx of inhabitants, right?
It's true. We used to be able to keep most things, downtown, or there was obviously like amenities in like the West End, but with the huge amount of developments across the causeway now, like I've been seeing more and more stores and shops, and stuff
which is great.
Service those areas.
And with that fixed link going across now, which will be done sometime next year, maybe.
Well, it is Kingston construction. You shouldn't push it.
Well, that's a big project. But that being said, that's only going to allow people to commute in and out of the different areas, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to be a boon to both the city, the downtown, and to that area too.
Yeah.
For those that choose to want to live there or work there. I mean, again, D&D is a large employer, military, and so that'll afford. The benefit of that is it'll afford those that feel they don't want to live in that area of the city for whatever reason can commute back and forth quite easily, right? So those kinds of things are going to be necessary and worthwhile improvements that will only augment the strength of the municipality going forward, for sure.
Yeah, of course. And like this is still years in the work.
Oh, yeah. Right? I mean, I had a number in my head, and I literally pulled this one out of pretty much thin air. But I felt that if Kingston's core population could get to like 250,000, that would definitely propel it to that next echelon of municipality, right? Where now all of a sudden Kingston's already sort of the regional center, but it would just then take it to a level where these things would be required, right? And so now you're going to get outside investment coming in, you're going to get other players coming in, you're going to get more manufacturing coming back, you're going to get more, it just leads to all kinds of, and again, we started to see that with the Frulact factory, with the milk factory, with, there's all kinds of businesses coming into the area that we're unaware of that are starting to put roots down here and whatnot. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not just this kind of town in between Ottawa and Toronto.
No, and we're not, and we're not as sleepy as we used to be, and then that's the thing. And I still see it. I have some folks that are coming here, relocating, and they're so. They'd love to stay in their marketplace, but now they're coming for work. But their marketplace is just outside the GTA, and we're talking starting at $1 million, right? Where here they can still come to Kingston and still get something for $550,000. It may not, right? But it's still a house. It may not be the perfect house, but it's still going to be a place that you can get into, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel like we're equal parts on topic and kind of slipped off the stress test conversation there.
We kind of strayed a bit.
We got into the future of Kingston real estate there. But I mean, I honestly think it's a good thing to talk about speculation, because there are still a lot of people who are looking foreseeably to the long-term future. If I was to look at my current reality, it's still a toss-up whether I want to stay in Kingston and invest more time into the next decade of my life being here, or take the plunge, go rent in Toronto. And it's a fair point, to kind of think about
those
that.
those are personal value-based decisions on. You almost have to do a cost-benefit analysis on that in terms of your personal life, in terms of what's the gain by moving there. What opportunities will come to me that makes this cost worth doing versus staying in Kingston? Because if you stay in Kingston, then you may not have the opportunities that you'd have outside of here. And yet, though,
But on the flip side, because there's less competition in Kingston, you can stay here, make a better name for yourself.
Yeah.
So, you're right. It all depends.
And I'm going to say this out loud, and people are going to get mad at me, but relatively speaking, Kingston is still an inexpensive place to live. I'm going to say that out loud. And housing is still relatively inexpensive. I know the locals are probably going to try to lynch me and start a lynch mob, but I'm going to tell you this right now. It's still, relatively speaking, an affordable place to live.
So I already hear the pitchforks and the torches outside.
Yeah, I'm sure. Trust me. And that's, I was, I probably shouldn't say it, but anyway, I was test driving vehicles a couple of weeks ago and in the GTA in Oakville. And so I went into this one dealership and I look around and I said, I think to myself, everybody in Kingston says, where's the money coming from? Well, I'm going to tell you, you just had to walk into this dealership and you knew where the money was coming from. Because I'm going to tell you, this dealership was pretty much 2 blocks large, had a baby grand piano in the lobby, and had very high-end vehicles in it from stem to stern, and the place was packed. So there's money out there in the world, and it's starting to funnel here, which is not a bad thing.
There's no denying that, absolutely. And you're right, though. Like, the larger a city grows, the more opportunity there is to kind of hit that point of, like, breach into that upper middle class kind of level of, and then those homes are more attainable.
And I'm just looking at my sheet here now so that we don't completely go off course. But it's funny. I had a note here to put about, because I read an article just this morning as well about, the concern with Canadian household debt and indebtedness, and Tiff Macklin, who's the governor of the Bank of Canada there, had commented that that in itself will lead to a flattening of the marketplace, right? Because you get to a certain level of debt, then you can't do any more with it, right? Other than maintain it, right? So, but it's curious because the author of the article reminded, and I'd known this and I'd forgotten about it, but do you realize that Canada Mortgage and Housing, at the start of the pandemic, or maybe a quarter of the way into the pandemic, made a forecast, and their forecast was that we'd actually be the exact opposite of the spectrum that we're at today. That values would have dropped by 50%, that the market was going to be in the toilet, and that was it. We're heading into recession. Well, just goes to show you that even the experts don't get it right. So anybody that's out there saying it's a bubble and when's the bubble going to burst, well, yeah, we're all wrong and we're all right, I guess, in that regard. But anyway, I just thought that was a humorous little anecdote to the conversation. But
so the bubble might not burst, but do you see it's kind of starting to smooth over a bit?
No, I don't.
Like the more kind of the 100 plus over asking price.
No, it just happened to me last night. Place was listed for $549,900 and actually arguably priced appropriately. Pat on the back there, but for what it was, a nice home in Henderson Place, but it was only a 2-bedroom home. And we had, I want to say, at least 20 viewings and then 4 offers. So obviously the configuration lent itself to weeding out some potential buyers, being only a 2-bedroom home, but had a pool. It was in a great area, good sized lot. It sold for $121,000 over asking.
Wow.
So, and they were local buyers, not out of town buyers, just to be clear. So.
Oh yeah. And of course, there is to be something to be said about local buyers wanting to just kind of either downsize, upsize, or just find something they're more comfortable with, especially because the pandemic kind of taught people that, well, there's not really much point in investing in travel right now. Might as well invest in a place where I'm comfortable.
Absolutely. Because people have saved a lot of money.
Yeah.
Those that again had it and still had their jobs and were earning an income were able to save a lot of money. The other thing that's, I spoke with a mortgage broker that I work with earlier today before this, because I just wanted to get their thoughts on this whole stress testing and stuff. And he brought a very interesting point that he's probably busier doing refinances. And I want to bring that, I want to just talk on it briefly, where, again, people have all this newfound equity in their homes that they didn't have a year ago, that they didn't have 6 months ago. And regardless of your and if you did buy your home 2 years ago and you're 3 years into your mortgage or 2 years into your mortgage, I recommend to everybody to get some good quality information, consultation with a good mortgage broker, because to refinance, break that mortgage and refinance at today's interest rates, which again, 1.55%, even with the penalty that you would pay for your mortgage, you can do a lot of things. And a lot of people, what they're doing is they're paying off debt, right? Which we always hear about, everybody's going into debt. Well, some people now have the benefit and the advantage to take some of this newfound equity and actually consolidate some debt and get themselves to a better place where they can, in the next 2 years' time or 3 years' time, then they're going to be better off financially. So, it's not all gloom and doom all the time, or everyone's gonna get snowed under. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that more than anything, especially with the pandemic, it's a lot easier to kind of think about the negatives and the possible repercussions of everything than it is to think about the pluses.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Yeah. For sure.
No, absolutely. Well,
did we cover everything?
Kind of. I think, like, I'm just looking up and down, we kind of jumped around, but for the most part, I think, people kind of understand what the changes to the stress tests are, what it can affect. And, it does mean that people will have to start, I guess, for the most part, people will have to shop smarter,
Well, and the other thing is, everybody says, what happens when rates go up? We didn't talk about that. And, and will rates go up? Well, of course they're going to go up. The history of time has told us that rates go up and rates go down, and it's a cycle. Are they going to go up tomorrow? No. And in fact, those that would have a more informed opinion, rates aren't going to go up till the end of 2022, conceivably even into partway into 2023. And I know everyone's always immediate reaction is, well, you get these big houses and people are overpaying for them, and then they get all this big mortgage. What happens if the rates go up? Well, you know what? You gotta plan for a rainy day as well. And, while you're at 1.55 or 2, whatever, then, if rates start to creep up, then, you have options available to you. One, importantly, is to, either maybe prepay some principal down on your mortgage if you have the availability to do that, in which case then your payments can stay relatively the same. Or again, depending on if and when, then your home conceivably is going to have that much more equity in it, and you'll be able to do the refinance at that point in time in terms of being able to get a mortgage or a payment that's going to be more amenable, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of that. But I mean, I was at the UPS store the other day. I had to send something off, and the owner, who has gotten to know me quite well because I'm in there far too often, but she, same, because everybody's got the same questions, right? Everybody's saying the same things. So is it slowing down at all? And I just feel so sorry for these young people that can't buy a house. And I said, the prices are, and I said, I'm going to guess that was a conversation that happened 50 years ago. I'm going to guess that's a conversation that happened 30 years ago. I'm going to guess this conversation happened 10 years ago between in households and families, and saying, oh man, if the prices still keep going up. And here's my own personal little rant. I'm going to rant right now, and it's probably going to cost me because I'm sure people are going to get pissed off, but what the heck? This whole thing about, people can't afford to buy houses anymore. Well, people seem to forget. I started in late 80s, okay? And I suffered through 1990s when in Kingston, the average 5-year mortgage interest rate was 12%. It took an average of 120 days for a house to sell. The average. So, and nobody remembers when you had your house for sale, Ben, at $300,000, and because it was sitting there for 60 days, buyer X comes in and says, hey, you're sitting there for 60 days. I'm going to give you $240,000. How do you like that? Right? So nobody remembers that side of it, when buyers were in control and could buy and take advantage of a a buyer's market and everything else. It's a cyclical thing, people. It's gonna happen again, and I don't think we'll ever go back to the 90s, just because of everything we've talked about already. But so I guess my point is I'm not empathetic. I'm not unsympathetic, but I'm also there's two shoes that have to be worn in that in that relationship. So yeah. What do you think? Is that a good spot to end it?
I think so.
All right. Yeah. Sorry for rambling, everybody. I thought that was anyway. It was good though. Good to have the company and get another one done in the books. Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right.